Well, I'm here wiggling around with the thing. We'll get this to where it should be at a
Yeah.
New Forest Folk Festival, and I'm sitting with Baden Prince, storyteller. But he wasn't a storyteller when I first met him. Neither was I. We have only discovered this recently, but we were at the University of East Anglia in Norwich together. And you were doing what were you studying?
I was in the School of English and American Studies doing English and American literature and history.
Yes, and I was just doing American studies because it was as a mature student you could get in there without any foreign language at all. You didn't even need
Mm.
no level, so just a couple of A levels at
Uh,
C and above. So I that and so and I was just doing pure American studies. I was doing it mainly because at that point I was just doing poetry. I was a poet, but I was
mm,
doing performance poetry and all sorts of things. And with and most of my influences then were American poets, the beat poets Allen Ginsberg and so
mm-hmm,
forth.
mm-hmm,
So I thought, well, that's handy. And then I had Essex as first choice, but I liked how UEA worked. I liked their
mm,
tutorial system because that meant you didn't have to go to too many lectures.
yeah.
I believe you took full advantage of that.
One of the reasons we didn't remember that we'd both been there together is that I came the conventional route straight from school. And I quickly sussed out that you weren't marked on attendance and you mostly had to link up through seminars. And that once you got into the seminar at the beginning of term, got the reading list, and made sure that you came back towards the end of term, got the essay topics, and gave yourself a couple of weekends to get the essays written, you could pretty much guarantee to pass the course. So was not physically present for a huge number of the actual seminars that took place. So that's
But
probably one of the reasons we
but
hardly saw
amongst
one
your, so
another.
you just had to do so many units. And amongst the units
Mm,
was a combined studies of literature and history,
yeah,
black history and literature,
yeah.
which nowadays would be called
Afro
Afro-American.
American studies. Yeah.
African American.
Mm,
It was Ted Jones, the poet, who called himself Afro-American, and no one was doing that in those days.
mm.
I brought Ted Jones to the university. I didn't know that undergraduates weren't supposed to book people in, so I brought this
I don't
fantastic.
think that would have stopped you anyway.
No, no. Anyway, I booked him,
Yeah,
got him a lecture, and but it was a good course. It was a good course.
yeah,
It was, and you did actually participate in the debate. You were physically present for
yeah.
a debate because they Williams, what was his name? William Styron.
William Styron, who wrote the
Nat,
supposed a biography of Nat Turner, who led
yeah,
a slave revolt. And Styron was a white Southerner with some very odd ideas. And the debate was whether or not someone like him could give a sort of accurate rendition of Turner's life and his motivation for doing what he did. Unfortunately, I was on the team that decided that he couldn't. And a close friend of mine, or she became Suzanne, one of only 3 young black students, was on the other team trying to argue that he could. And the book was a travesty. So I opened the debate effectively by saying this was nonsense and the book was racist and it was disgusting and every single stereotype of black men was represented there and every white man's fear. It was rubbish, which it was. And then Suzanne came up to argue for the other side and she said, well, basically I agree with everything Baden said. The debate ended.
yeah. Well, you point out there was only 3 black students in the thing, so
Uh,
and probably 2 of them were women.
yeah,
So it was by process of elimination that we realised that
worked out it had to be me.
there was only 1 black student. I remember this very thin gentleman, of
What
not
are you
the
trying to say, John?
nothing. Your stature has filled out a little since then. So I did, in no way did you look like the person the image I had in my head.
I've become more rounded in every sense of the word.
But it was, that was an interesting debate, but I mean, it was a brilliant course. It was a brilliant
Yeah.
course, and Chris Bixby was running it, I think, and he went on to do Kaleidoscope on Radio 4. We were very lucky. There were very few. There was only UEA and Hull doing American Studies, and so it was, and it was just like, it's the reason why you should be able to do courses that have no financial, there's no financial reward afterwards. A totally useless course. Well, it hasn't been. I've used it in. I mean, it helped. It helped in my prison work actually, because to actually know a little bit about history. But then then I think I mean, in the way of things, I mean, I was a mature student, so married with one child, so we didn't really stay in touch. And then accidentally again, there was in Essex, there was creative endeavours, were they called, or
Creative partnerships.
Creative partnerships was putting artists in schools, and you had a residency in one school.
Yes, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but you were then brought in to do storytelling work and poetry with the years 1 and 2, I think, and I was working with years 3 upwards, using creative writing and poetry as a way of sort of encouraging. At the time, I was mostly doing poetry as a way of encouraging children to, sort of improving their literacy skills and giving them confidence in reading, in writing. And John was working in the same school, and we met up. By then, I'd heard of John Rowe, and we were together in the school for what, like 10 weeks, but we never actually got to see one another working in the classroom with the children because of the way the timetable worked. And the only time we did meet was when the deputy head requested a sort of after school session, which we both participated in. And she wanted to hear us doing storytelling.
Yeah, it was a weird school because I think staff, these projects are agreed, and then staff changes, and the next person is why have we got this coming in?
Yeah.
And it wasn't.
You get some teachers who really welcomed the artist's involvement and built on the work that you did with the children, and then you got other teachers who were like, well, this is interfering with my teaching time and I've got a curriculum to get through. So it was a real mixed bag.
So at that point you were writing poetry?
Yeah, mostly.
So you were part of that whole sort of London poetry scene. What was that, in the 90s?
I had come through that, late 80s, early 90s. Purely by chance. I sort of did a writing course, found myself writing poetry, and then discovered that there was this vibrant, thriving poetry and performance, live spoken word, live literature, spoken word. It went by various names. And I became a part of it and actually ended up running, if I say it myself, a really successful poetry night.
Where was that?
Speakeasy in Hackney area, Stoke Newington first, then down at the Art Gallery on Hackney Road near Shoreditch, and eventually in the bar alongside the Hackney Empire Theatre by invitation. So, yeah.
So were you part of that whole, or did you get involved with that whole sort of poetry, the black literature scene that from Toussaint Louverture, or what Walt Rodney bookshop?
Walter Rodney and Olga Louverture.
What was the one in near Finsbury Park?
Stroud Green Road. I'm trying to.
Yeah,
the name will come back to me.
It was run by John LaRose.
That's right.
Yeah.
New Beacon Books.
New Beacon Books.
Yeah. Not directly, because these were the sort of first generation of West Indians who come over. They were more like my father's generation, and they'd gone on and set up these bookshops, and they set up the Black Book Fair that took place in Ealing every year. Indirectly, I'd become involved because at one point I was doing community work with an organization in Fulham, and I was running their supplementary education program. And we set up a library, which meant that I had to visit New Beacon was the most accessible one, and ordered, spent time in there reading and going through their stock list and ordering stuff, and going to the Black Book Fair again to make contacts and so on. So I knew of them, and I got involved partially, but I wasn't part of that scene yet.
Because I used to go to the Third Ward and Radical Black Book Fair partly so you could buy books, because it was I was running a bookshop at Colchester Arts Centre at the time, and involved with Caribbean Centre in Ipswich. So with I was the youth officer for Caribbean Centre in Ipswich, and so I'd go down to try and get books that weren't going through that London filter. So you get stuff that was printed directly in Africa and the Caribbean
and in the States. Because there was a lot of that stuff you just couldn't get.
No,
other than through these outlets.
Yeah, and New Beacon, I stocked a library in the Caribbean Centre in Ipswich through New Beacon Books, same as you. New Beacon Books had this fantastic, and later I got, because it was almost when I was doing my prison work, it was the guys had to order through mail or something that did mail order, and I thought this was, I mean, it's almost discouragement to black entrepreneurs, because how they couldn't become part of the club, because all the mail order stuff were run by and it had to be recognised by the prison authorities and so forth. So I managed to get, because New Beacon had built their business up on mail order, and so I got New Beacon accepted as so the guys could order books through New Beacon.
Good.
And so they were really important for. And I didn't realise they were actually part of history. They did. Well, I mean, there was an exhibition at Guild. I thought it was a continuum. I didn't think it stopped. But there was an exhibition in Guildhall a few years ago, and it had all about that period. And because the Walt Rodney bookshop was bombed by the National Front, was set on fire by the National Front. And so all that, but I was in Ipswich, which had quite a large black population, but was never recognised as such. So so you had to go and drag the stuff up there. And then but we ran those parallel existences, but still weren't conscious of each other's existence.
And how much we'd done, how much of the work that we'd done, we had in common with one another. And then the next time we met was at East Anglia Storytelling Festival, I think.
Because Justin DeMere brought you up.
Justin DeMere brought me in. She saw me at an event in Colchester. The second East Anglia Storytelling Festival was coming up, and she invited me up to perform, and I had a very, very hairy time on stage with yourself. And,
what do you mean? What do you mean hairy time on stage? Because I was there.
I'm on stage. It was the first big thing I'd ever done, and this was a big thing. And yourself and Taffy Thomas were sitting at a table directly in front of the stage. And I'm looking down at these two storytelling legends, and I'm at my first proper storytelling gig. And panicking. I was in a complete state of panic, so much so that I missed out the entire middle section of the story that I was telling, and started the final bit and suddenly realized nobody's going to have a clue what I'm talking about. I've missed the build-up. But I sort of didn't panic, and from performing poetry, you learn. As long as you don't tell the audience that you've messed up, you're okay. So I went back and said, oh, well, everybody, when I say everybody was excited, the boys from the village weren't. And then I reeled it back and told that bit. And Justine said to me afterwards, Baden, I thought you were telling a slightly different version, or you told that story differently. I said, differently?
Yeah, we've all done it. And then,
And,
yeah. But then we've done loads. We've done
since
this.
then,
We've done Bromyard. Through you were part of the whole World Storytelling Cafe, but through lockdown we did.
a lot of
We
stuff
did.
online.
I curated a website called World Storytelling Cafe. Still do, but I mean, the height of lockdown, we were doing 26 programs a week.
Yeah.
And I just got in touch with every storyteller I'd ever known around the world, and I reconnected with you through that. I think no, I hadn't even taken you up to Bromyard then. What had I?
No.
Because I was going to take you to Chippenham, and then
lockdown
happened.
Yeah.
And so and then after that we did
we did Cambridge Folk Festival together.
Cambridge Folk Festival
a couple of times.
Yeah, that must have been before lockdown, I think. But but then afterwards we did the festival in Marrakesh.
Yes, the actual the World Storytelling Cafe International Storytelling Festival happened in Marrakesh at the actual World Storytelling Cafe, which was then a real physical entity, and it we only got the confirmation that it was going to go ahead something like 8 days before the date the festival was due to take place. And it was done on pure goodwill and faith and hope, because I'd booked my ticket 6 months before, not knowing whether there was going to be a festival. And so had most people, and most people who came just
bit of a wing on a prayer.
Yeah.
Well, we've done loads since then. We've done every time I get stuck and have to be somewhere else simultaneously, every time I double book myself, I know I can ring him up and say,
I'm his stunt double.
Yeah, we look very similar.
Come and be at this event, babe. Nobody will notice.
So,
but it seems to work. It seems to work.
So that's how you came here last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'd sort of put myself here and Tewkesbury Medieval Festival at the same time.
And I had to come and
you'd think by now I'd know I know how to do a diary.
Yeah, and I had to come and do the Saturday for you, didn't I?
Yeah.
So I parachuted in, did it, and then stayed over.
Yeah, but you didn't realise the New Forest was quite large.
No.
You just put in booking.com New Forest.
I sort of booked an Airbnb because I can't do tents and I don't have a caravan.
And we've tried sharing a camper, and it doesn't.
It's challenges.
It has its issues.
So I booked an Airbnb, and I just went Airbnb New Forest, and I ended up in a very nice B&B with a lovely host. Literally, I can't remember the name of the area, the other side of the forest. Somebody told me when I told them where it was. 40-minute drive to get from here to there. So this year I learned my lesson, checked some postcodes, and I'm in one that's 8 minutes down the road in Lindford, I think, or
Bromyard, they find you something, don't they? Bromyard, you did Bromyard for me last year.
Yeah, Bromyard was brilliant.
We did. Have you done that twice? No, you just did once.
No, I was hoping to get called back the second year, but it didn't happen.
No.
So that was a brilliant festival, a really good time.
Yeah. So you've now become under Chippenham. You did.
Chippenham I've done.
And you, where was it you first saw Morris dancing? Being a Londoner, of course, he just thought when he first saw Morris dancing, he had taken some kind of hallucinogenic.
I've never seen so many Morris dances in my life. At one point, I genuinely thought, I'm seeing things. Because everywhere you turned, and there's bells behind you and bells over there, and there's another group and there's a cloud. I was like, what's going on? It
But
really was something else.
but you seem to have
Mm.
dropped into folk festivals. Seem to suit you.
Well, it's really laid back. People are really welcoming. Storytelling and folk music. There's clearly a strong link between the two in the terms of a lot of folk songs are stories. So the audience is quite receptive and they're very open. It's so easy. I find them really easy audiences to tell to and to work with, and the feedback's really positive and really encouraging. At the moment, we've got a family standing about sort of 5 yards away who came last year looking for John because they've been coming every year and sat with me for a good half an hour, 40 minutes, being told stories, and they've come
Didn't
back
realize
this
it.
year.
Didn't realize it wasn't John. you know.
And they've come back this year, and very much looking forward, they said, to seeing John, and pleasantly surprised to see me here as well. So it's that kind of
But
thing that I'm
I've
responding
noticed with your storytelling that you've moved much. You've almost developed a set that is much more to do with your Antiguan roots than.
There's partly that, and that's partly because I've recently been back. When I say recently, within the last month. So there's some stuff that I've come back from that with. And there's also another set that I've worked on, which I can remember the first time I saw a storyteller do an hour's telling, and it was Kate Corkery, and she incorporated stories from her own life as well as myths and legends from Ireland. And I remember having my mind completely blown. I said, how can you do that? At the time, I think if I ran a story for 15 minutes, I was doing well. And about 6 months ago, I realized that I've got a set of stories, three of them, that work together as a set, which I do under the heading Just Desserts. They're quite sort of contrasting stories. And it's a 50-minute, nearly an hour set. And to me, that kind of has marked, it's a mark of the development that's taken place over the period of time since we met at the East Anglia Festival, and I've done all this stuff with you. So it's done me some good somehow.
Yeah. But you're almost ready to retire from the day job
Well,
and
the
go full
daily
time.
drudge,
Yes.
yeah, and
Yeah.
join you itinerants on the poverty line. Um,
yeah. Yeah.
Looking forward to it,
Yeah,
actually.
I try and corrupt all my friends
You
into,
and
yeah,
Maria have been
yeah,
on at me for like the last
yeah,
2 years.
yeah.
Give up that. When are you giving up that job?
Give up that security.
Give up that old job. That's
Yeah,
Maria's
yeah,
mantra.
yeah,
But yeah, looking
yeah.
forward to it. Having more time to
All
do
my
more of
children
this.
have disappointed me. They've all gone into regular employment. They're, they see no romanticism in the art.
Well,
Artist.
I'm sure your children are going to see this, so I'm not going to say what I usually say when I hear that, which is that talent skips a generation. And I've met most of them, so that's not true. It's not true, guys. Just a joke.
Yeah, but you did. Yeah.
Mm.
So, well, thank you for that.
Pleasure.
That's a rough run through of our parallel existences. So, thank you.
Continued.
It's been a pleasure to have you around.
It's been an honor and a privilege, sir.